Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Going to be talking about something that today that everybody seems to love to talk about, everybody seems to love to reminisce over, and that is Blockbuster Video. Now, in particular, I'm going to be talking about the last time I ever went to Blockbuster, and this was a little over 10 years ago when we had moved into our new house. Now, just backing up a little bit, about 11 or 12 years ago, my wife and I decided we needed to move because our house was falling apart around us, and this was still our house we had in the 90s, after, a couple of years after we had gotten married. And in the years since, we'd had a couple of kids, and they were getting older, and we were just we needed more space and everything. I thought it'd be cool to have a game room and an office of my own instead of just a little corner. My writing career was starting to take off, and I just really needed a workspace. And we did move, and we put a bunch of stuff in storage during this move, and it had to be there a couple of months in the hot Texas sun, and everything was fine with that, but I made the big mistake of putting a couple of consoles in the storage unit that had metal, that were partly metal, a TI-99 and another console I will tell you about at another time in a future episode, because this is going to be one of those great gaming regrets, and it needs its own episode. Maybe when I hit 1,500 or 2,000 subscribers or something, I'll talk about that. But anyway, I lost a couple of valuable consoles during this time. Story for another time. Going to talk about Blockbuster today, the last time I ever went. Now, Blockbuster Video went out of business. I think technically the main Blockbuster Video went out of business in 2010. I know there's an independently owned one still left somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I think it's 2 or 3 hours from Portland, which I go every year for the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So maybe I'll, rent a car sometime when I'm there and drive down for it or whatever. Anyway, I know the last time I ever went to Blockbuster was after we had moved into this house. So this was, we moved a little over 10 years ago, October. And there's a couple of Blockbusters nearby, but this was during the time when they were going out of business and they were dumping everything. They just had super cheap DVDs, and they were selling their fixtures and all that kind of stuff. And also around this time, we had moved in, and we were unboxing everything, and we were, just fixing up the new house. We were, putting shelves up and everything. And my son's room, which is a really good room for him, just the right size and everything, and he really liked it. But the only thing was, it was painted a pale blue, and around the border, or around the wall, was this border about this, about this high, or this thick, this wide, a border all the way around his room that was Noah's Ark, like Noah's Ark cartoon, art, all the way around. He's, about 12 or 13 by this time, obviously too old for that. And that was just kind of weird anyway. So he obviously didn't want that in his room, the Noah's Ark art. So we were going to, scrape that off and paint his room and everything. But that was kind of low down on the priority list because we were still moving in, unboxing, unpacking, and just trying to survive, the move. And so it just so happens we went to Blockbuster, a couple of times while we were living, after we'd moved in, and they had these, they had movie backer cards. Now, if you don't know what those are these little cards at Blockbuster, and it sort of marks the spot. They would put them on the shelves, to mark the spot where the movie is or whatever, and to decorate and just, to make the movie look attractive to buy for the renter. And so these are really neat. Some are plastic and some are cardboard. Most of the ones I have are cardboard. But anyway, I'll show you the ones I have in just a few minutes, the ones I kept. So they had stacks and stacks and stacks of these, thousands and thousands of them. And they were selling them for $20 for $1. And so these are really neat. And so Ryan and I were looking at these, and we were thinking, these would look really neat in your room, really decorative. And in particular, they were about the same width as the Noah's Ark border. And we thought, why don't you go through, pick out a bunch of your favorite, cards for a bunch of your favorite movies, and, we can line them around your room, and you can put them up. Maybe we'll paint first and put them up, or maybe these will just be instead of the Noah's Ark border. Whatever the case, you can decorate these with your room, and if nothing else, they will cover up that hideous Noah's Ark art. Anyway, so we got those, and he picked out a stack, and I picked out a few with my favorite movies. I thought they'd just be kind of neat to decorate my office with. And so we got a bunch, and we brought him home, and the stack laid was in his room, and they were just kind of sitting there, and we would talk about, yeah, we'll put them up this Saturday, but we would get busy. We just never got around to doing it. And so a few days passed, and we never got around to doing it. And I thought, I'd like to get some more of those. Those are really neat. So we went back to the store, And I thought, you know, for 20, for a dollar, you know, I do a lot of video game shows. I thought maybe I could sell some of these. So I bought probably hundreds and hundreds, maybe over 1,000. I mostly picked out science fiction movies, horror movies, you know, genre movies that people at comic book and video game shows would like. Obviously, if there was anything video game related, you know, I'd buy those. And there were video game cards too, you know, shelf markers or movie backer cards, video game backer cards, whatever you want to call them. They had video game ones as well, you know, for actual, you know, for the consoles that were popular at the time. And so anyway, I bought a bunch of movie ones, a bunch of video game ones, and I was selling them at shows, at video game shows, for $0.25 a piece, and they were selling them. They were selling really well. You know, people were really excited. Most people would just go through and pick out a few for their favorite games or movies or whatever. Some people would buy a bunch, you know, to, you know, really put a lot of, you know, to decorate their, you know, game room or whatever. And yeah, I made a decent amount of money off of these. And so so that was really neat, you know. And towards the end of the block, I went twice back to get more of these. I went and bought a bunch more, and I thought, and then there was 2 Blockbusters going out of business at our house. And the very last time I ever went to Blockbuster was obviously not to rent a movie, because, you know, they weren't renting movies at this time. They were just selling them, you know, just leftover stock, former rentals and all that kind of stuff. And so I just bought you know, I think I bought a few DVDs, you know, just to watch. They weren't, but at this point, the going out of business sale had been going on for a pretty long time, so they didn't really have much good stuff, and I didn't really find any fixtures that would really fit in our new house. It just, you know, we had some shelf, you know, space in our game room and stuff. It just didn't find anything that would happen to work really well. Got some stuff later at IKEA. Anyway, story for another day. The very last trip I went to Blockbuster, my very last Blockbuster trip was just to get these movie backer cards. And like I said, I sold most of them. We never completed, you know, putting them up in Ryan's room, unfortunately. We ended up stripping the Noah's Ark border off and painting it dark blue and everything. Anyway, so these movie cards, these are really neat. Let me show you just a few of the ones I actually kept to decorate with. One is Watchmen, which is just a phenomenal, I just love this movie. It's not, you know, some purist, Alan Moore himself, don't like the movie. I'm sure Alan Moore probably never even saw it. He was so bitter about, you know, anything, you know, the guy that wrote Watchmen, the famous comic book scribe that wrote the original Watchmen comic book series that came out in the 80s. He hates anything to do with Watchmen that's not the original work. You know, he's out on that. He doesn't even accept, you know, the money. He gave it all to his artist. Anyway, so Watchmen, this is a great movie. I love it. So I've got this one. And The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is one of my favorite science fiction movies of all time. Great 50s black and white movie, just phenomenal. It's a very cautionary tale. I highly recommend it. Don't watch the remake with Keanu Reeves if you have to, or just, you know, it's watchable, but don't, you know, you can forget about it. If you never see that one, you're fine. You've got to see the original, though. And The Omega Man with Charlton Heston, which is based on the classic Richard Matheson novel, I Am Legend, a brilliant book that also, so this was loosely based on I Am Legend. There's a lot of differences, and it's more schlocky than the novel, but it is a lot of fun movie with it is a lot of fun. It's a great movie with Charlton Heston, who I did meet one time, story for another time. So anyway, that's a great movie, had to have it. And if you want a more faithful adaptation of I Am Legend, The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price as your movie. And I also picked up the Tom Cruise version of War of the Worlds. Not a great movie, but, you know, actually pretty good. It got slammed when it came out because the original is so beloved. And, you know, there's a lot of Tom Cruise haters. But anyway, it's actually a pretty good movie. And I like the original a lot more, but I like this film, so I picked it up. Most of the movie cards that I would find were for newer movies, but when I did find classic films that I liked, I would keep those. Obviously, I showed you the Tron one earlier, and this definitely goes in my Tron collection. Now, last but not least, my favorite, what I call people movie of all time, is in fact the greatest romantic comedy of all time, which is Annie Hall by Woody Allen, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And this one is actually made of plastic. Most of the movie cards, the movie backer cards you would find, these stacks and stacks and stacks, were cardboard, at least most of the ones we saw. But there are a few that are actually made of plastic. And so Annie Hall has a prominent place in my office because I absolutely love this film. It is brilliant. not a wasted scene, just some of the best dialogue ever written for film. Just a great movie, and definitely the greatest romantic comedy of all time. Fans of Moonstruck or When Harry Met Sally may beg to differ, but Annie Hall gets my vote. Anyway, so those are really the only cards I have left from that time. I sold the rest of them, and that was kind of an anticlimactic ending to Blockbuster. You know, just buying some movie cards, because I grew up just loving to go to the movie rental store in the early '80s. I actually date back. I'm so ancient that I remember actually paying in the old days, and I remember before Blockbuster was a thing, and there were, you know, like independent places to rent movies. You had to pay for a card to allow you to rent the movies to begin with. So, and I've heard that originally, very early on, it could be as much as $100 for a card. And but when I did it, the very first card I bought to rent movies with, I believe it was 82 or 83. I think I paid $30 for my card that would allow me to then rent movies for, you know, a few dollars each or whatever. But anyway, it was an interesting time, you know, when you could first rent movies. You know, for years, you know, you would just have to wait for you know, whatever would come on TV, and you couldn't set, you know, there was nothing to you couldn't record it. You didn't have any recording devices, so you'd either have to stay up really late or miss some social engagement. She would make sure to be home to watch that on TV. But anyway, Blockbuster and movie rental in general traded all that, and the ability to just buy movies on video cassette was just phenomenal. But anyway, this has been the story of the very last time I ever went to Blockbuster. And again, I hope to make it up to the Blockbuster in the Pacific Northwest at some point, so I can have maybe a better last experience with Blockbuster, maybe something more movie related, where maybe I can buy a video that's for sale, or some, you know, maybe even some snacks or something. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. If you could like this video, I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to find any of my works, any of my Facebook, my Twitter, my Patreon page, links to my writing, go to brettweisswords.com. All right, guys, thank you so much. We will talk to you later. Peace out.